William Henry Bill Gates 3, October 28, 1955, Seattle, better known as Bill Gates, is an American author, software developer, entrepreneur, investor and businessman. He is married with 3 children. Gates is one of the founders of Microsoft and is currently the company's technical advisor. Wanting to devote more time to charity, he resigned from Microsoft's chairmanship in March 2020. Gates is the richest person in the world, with a net worth of $110 billion as of August 2019. He has donated approximately $35 billion and continues to do so. American entrepreneur Gates transformed his 2-person company, Microsoft, into a leading software company. Gates became one of the most successful corporate bosses in the late 20th century. Seattle, Washington. Born as the son of a lawyer father and a teacher mother, Gates yet 12 years old in a private school, first informatics, IT, and went to the course. He and his schoolmate Paul Allen spent most of his free time working on computer software. In order to be able to use the big computer of a company near them without paying, the 2 friends were searching for software bugs for users. Students who specialized in computers in this way founded their first company, Data, in 1972. This company immediately sold $20,000 by producing software for a traffic counting and control system. A year later, Gates had an internship at the arms company TRW. Personal computers were still in the early stages of their development in the mid-1970s. The most important example of the MITS company, which they called Altair, did not yet have a uniform, usable software, but had an incomplete operating system. Thanks to BASIC, the software language developed by Gates and Allen for Altair in 1974, computer users could write their own programs. MITS company purchased the marketing license from young researchers and ordered them to further develop the system. Gates, whereupon charged with leaving the Allen Albuquerque, New Mexico at Microsoft, founded a company called Microsoft was one of the first businesses to devote itself to developing software for microcomputers. Shortly afterward, companies like General Electric were among their regular customers. In 1977, Gates signed license agreements with PC, personal computer, manufacturers such as Apple, Tandy and Commodore to equip his tools with BASIC. Also Fortran, COBOL and Pascal. By developing such software languages, it provided an advantage to Microsoft and the opening of the international market path for them, Japan being the first after 1978. Gates was able to make sales of about $3 million in 1979 with only 13 employees. IBM turned to Gates after Gary Kildall rejected his proposal for an operating system to be written for PCs. Gates purchased the DOS operating system from Seattle Computer Products, SCP, for $50,000 and recruited Tim Patterson, one of the DOS developers at SCP. DOS operating system was changed in line with IBM's needs and renamed MS-DOS. MS-DOS, Microsoft Disk Operating System, broke worldwide sales records in the 1980s, 120 million copies. Gates was able to sell to other hardware manufacturers with a clever vision, reserving his rights. In the ensuing time, as more and more companies introduced devices compatible with IBM, the operating system they developed became uniform for all computers. Meanwhile, the company, which has 1,000 employees, established branches in Europe after the mid-1980s. Gates, who led the company, placed emphasis on consistent teamwork and a strict efficiency principle. The productivity of all employees was evaluated every 6 months. In parallel with the Gates operating system, he was also doing extremely successful work in the field of application software. After the multi-plant spreadsheet computing software, 1982, in 1983 he launched the first text processing system called Word that used a mouse. Especially Word was sold well in Europe, but in the USA it only gradually succeeded against its rivals called Lotus 1-2-3 and WordPerfect. Microsoft's decisive success in the software field came with the order the Apple company gave them. Various application systems, such as Word and Excel, have been developed for the computer that will serve as an example for the Macintosh. Gates turned his company into a joint stock company in 1986. Before long, only his own share, 45%, had a stock market value of over $1 billion. Gates started the development of Windows, a graphical improvement of the MS-DOS operating system, in 1985. 3 years after launching Windows, 1987, they were successful with a marketing campaign. Microsoft was constantly expanding this system with more advanced software elements. Gates was especially concerned about making Windows a simpler and more useful format. Microsoft was the undisputed market leader in 1993, annual turnover, $36 billion, stock market value, over $140 billion. Microsoft released the first version of Windows at retail on November 20th, 1985, and in August, the company made a deal with IBM to develop a separate operating system called OS/2. He developed the first version of the new system. While the partnership broke the two companies, Bill Gates developed the standalone version of OS/2, led by Microsoft IBM. But it ended in 1991. Windows is still being developed. Bill Gates appeared in Microsoft's commercials in 2008. The ad used the picture in which Gates was arrested in 1977. Famous comedian Jerry Seinfeld was also featured in this ad. The second ad also featured Gates and Seinfeld, but this time they were eating in a house. Bill Gates appears as one of the richest people in the world. The size of the house is 6,100 square meters. Gates' home includes an underwater music system and an 18-meter swimming pool, a 230 square meter gym and a 93 square meter dining room. He keeps the manuscripts of the famous painter Da Vinci in his house. He makes $230 per second. It's fine to celebrate success, but it is more important to heed the lessons of failure. Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose. Technology is just a tool. In terms of getting the kids working together and motivating them, the teacher is the most important. If you can't make it good, at least make it look good. Your most unhappy customers are your greatest source of learning. The first rule of any technology used in a business is that automation applied to an efficient operation will magnify the efficiency. The second is that automation applied to an inefficient operation will magnify the inefficiency. We all need people who will give us feedback. That's how we improve. I think it's fair to say that personal computers have become the most empowering tool we've ever created. They're tools of communication, they're tools of creativity, and they can be shaped by their user. The PC has improved the world in just about every area you can think of. Amazing developments in communications, collaboration and efficiencies. New kinds of entertainment and social media. Access to information and the ability to give a voice to people who would never have been heard. Contrary to popular belief, I don't spend a whole lot of time following soccer. But as I have traveled around the world to better understand global development and health, I've learned that soccer is truly universal. No matter where I go, that's what kids are playing. That's what people are talking about. Well, the protester, I think, is a very powerful thing. It's basically a mechanism of democracy that, along with capitalism, scientific innovation, those things have built the modern world. And it's wonderful that the new tools have empowered that protest us so that state secrets, bad developments are not hidden anymore. I'm a great believer that any tool that enhances communication has profound effects in terms of how people can learn from each other, and how they can achieve the kind of freedoms that they're interested in. Climate change is a terrible problem, and it absolutely needs to be solved. It deserves to be a huge priority. As we look ahead into the next century, leaders will be those who empower others. I actually thought that it would be a little confusing during the same period of your life to be in one meeting when you're trying to make money, and then go to another meeting where you're giving it away. I mean, is it gonna erode your ability, to make money? Are you gonna somehow get confused about what you're trying to do? Security is, I would say, our top priority, because for all the exciting things you will be able to do with computers, organizing your lives, staying in touch with people, being creative, if we don't solve these security problems, then people will hold back. In terms of mathematics textbooks, why can't you have the scale of a national market? Right now, we have a Texas textbook that's different from a California textbook that's different from a Massachusetts textbook. That's very expensive. Research shows that there is only half as much variation in student achievement between schools as there is among classrooms in the same school. If you want your child to get the best education possible, it is actually more important to get him assigned to a great teacher than to a great school. I believe that if you show people the problems and you show them the solutions, they will be moved to act. I believe in innovation, and that the way you get innovation is you fund research and you learn the basic facts. The internet is becoming the town square for the global village of tomorrow. Everyone needs a coach. It doesn't matter whether you're a basketball player, a tennis player, a gymnast or a bridge player. Software innovation, like almost every other kind of innovation, requires the ability to collaborate and share ideas with other people, and to sit down and talk with customers and get their feedback and understand their needs. Headlines, in a way, are what mislead you, because bad news is a headline, and gradual improvement is not. Intellectual property has the shelf life of a banana. You may have heard of Black Friday and Cyber Monday. There's another day you might want to know about, Giving Tuesday. The idea is pretty straightforward. On the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, shoppers take a break from their gift buying and donate what they can to charity. By the time we see that climate change is really bad, your ability to fix it is extremely limited. The carbon gets up there, but the heating effect is delayed. And then the effect of that heat on the species and ecosystem is delayed. That means that even when you turn virtuous, things are actually going to get worse for quite a while. If you go back to 1800, everybody was poor. I mean everybody. The Industrial Revolution kicked in, and a lot of countries benefited, but by no means everyone. I really had a lot of dreams when I was a kid, and I think a great deal of that grew out of the fact that I had a chance to read a lot. I think the thing we see is that as people are using video games more, they tend to watch passive TV a bit less. And so using the PC for the internet, playing video games, is starting to cut into the rather unbelievable amount of time people spend watching TV. I've always been amazed by Da Vinci, because he worked out science on his own. He would work by drawing things and writing down his ideas. Of course, he designed all sorts of flying machines way before you could actually build something like that. If GM had kept up with technology like the computer industry has, we would all be driving $25 cars that got 1000 mpg. In business, the idea of measuring what you are doing, picking the measurements that count like customer satisfaction and performance. You thrive on that. What's amazing is, if young people understood how doing well in school makes the rest of their life so much interesting, they would be more motivated. It's so far away in time that they can't appreciate what it means for their whole life. Paper is no longer a big part of my day. I get 90% of my news online, and when I go to a meeting and want to jot things down, I bring my tablet PC. It's fully synchronized with my office machine, so I have all the files I need. It also has a note-taking piece of software called OneNote, so all my notes are in digital form. Globalization has made copper and other minerals more valuable, and Ghana and Kenya have recently discovered mineral resources. By improving health, empowering women, population growth comes down. Expectations are a form of first-class truth. If people believe it, it's true. Should there be cameras everywhere in outdoor streets? My personal view is having cameras in inner cities is a very good thing. In the case of London, petty crime has gone down. They catch terrorists because of it. And if something really bad happens, most of the time you can figure out who did it. Discrimination has a lot of layers that make it tough for minorities to get a leg up. The US immigration laws are bad, really, really bad. I'd say treatment of immigrants is one of the greatest injustices done in our government's name. The advance of technology is based on making it fit in so that you don't really even notice it, so it's part of everyday life. Treatment without prevention is simply unsustainable. Just in terms of allocation of time resources, religion is not very efficient. There's a lot more I could be doing on a Sunday morning. Governments will always play a huge part in solving big problems. They set public policy and are uniquely able to provide the resources to make sure solutions reach everyone who needs them. They also fund basic research, which is a crucial component of the innovation that improves life for everyone. Information technology and business are becoming inextricably interwoven. I don't think anybody can talk meaningfully about one without talking about the other. Since when has the world of computer software design been about what people want? This is a simple question of evolution. The day is quickly coming when every knee will bow down to a silicon fist, and you will all beg your binary gods for mercy. If you've found some way to educate yourself about engineering, stocks, or whatever it is, good employers will have some type of exam or interview and see a sample of your work. I don't think culture is something you can describe. In 9th grade, I came up with a new form of rebellion. I hadn't been getting good grades, but I decided to get all A's without taking a book home. I didn't go to math class, because I knew enough and had read ahead, and I placed within the top 10 people in the nation on an aptitude exam. At Microsoft there are lots of brilliant ideas, but the image is that they all come from the top. I'm afraid that's not quite right. What destroys more self-confidence than any other educational thing in America is being assigned to some remedial math when you get into some college, and then it's not taught very well and you end up with this sense of, hey, I can't really figure those things out. Being flooded with information doesn't mean we have the right information or that we're in touch with the right people. We all sort of do want incentives for creative people to still exist at a certain level. You know, maybe rock stars shouldn't make as much, who knows? But you want as much creativity to take place in the future as took place in the past. Whether it's Google or Apple or free software, we've got some fantastic competitors and it keeps us on our toes. Capitalism has shortfalls. It doesn't necessarily take care of the poor, and it underfunds innovation, so we have to offset that. Polio's pretty special because once you get an eradication, you no longer have to spend money on it, it's just there as a gift for the rest of time. People everywhere love Windows. If African farmers can use improved seeds and better practices to grow more crops and get them to market, then millions of families can earn themselves a better living and a better life. Well, no one gives aid to Zimbabwe through the Mugabe government. We've got to put a lot of money into changing behavior. Historically, privacy was almost implicit, because it was hard to find and gather information. But in the digital world, whether it's digital cameras or satellites or just what you click on, we need to have more explicit rules, not just for governments but for private companies. This is a fantastic time to be entering the business world, because business is going to change more in the next 10 years than it has in the last 50. If I'd had some set idea of a finish line, don't you think I would have crossed it years ago? Innovations that are guided by smallholder farmers, adapted to local circumstances, and sustainable for the economy and environment will be necessary to ensure food security in the future. When a country has the skill and self-confidence to take action against its biggest problems, it makes outsiders eager to be a part of it. I believe the returns on investment in the poor are just as exciting as successes achieved in the business arena, and they are even more meaningful. It's the poorer people in tropical zones who will get really hit by climate change, as well as some ecosystems, which nobody wants to see disappear. The general idea of the rich helping the poor, I think, is important. If your culture doesn't like geeks, you are in real trouble. Unemployment rates among Americans who never went to college are about double that of those who have a post-secondary education. Google's done a super good job on search, Apple's done a great job on the iPod. The most amazing philanthropists are people who are actually making a significant sacrifice. I was lucky to be involved and get to contribute to something that was important, which is empowering people with software. In American math classes, we teach a lot of concepts poorly over many years. In the Asian systems they teach you very few concepts very well over a few years. I would counsel people to go to college, because it's one of the best times in your life in terms of who you meet and develop a broad set of intellectual skills. The outpouring of support from millions of people in the immediate aftermath of the earthquake in Haiti has been impressive. Certainly there's a phenomenon around open source. You know, free software will be a vibrant area. There will be a lot of neat things that get done there. Should surveillance be usable for petty crimes like jaywalking or minor drug possession? Or is there a higher threshold for certain information? Those aren't easy questions. I have been struck again and again by how important measurement is to improving the human condition. It is hard to overstate how valuable it is to have all the incredible tools that are used for human disease to study plants. The only thing I understand deeply, because in my teens I was thinking about it, and every year of my life, is software. So I'll never be hands-on on anything except software. It's really kind of cool to have solar panels on your roof. In this business, by the time you realize you're in trouble, it's too late to save yourself. Unless you're running scared all the time, you're gone. I have a nice office. I have a nice house. So I'm not denying myself some great things. I just don't happen to have expensive hobbies. 640k ought to be enough for anybody. We always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years and underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10. Don't let yourself be lulled into inaction. Effective philanthropy requires a lot of time and creativity, the same kind of focus and skills that building a business requires. This social networking thing takes you to crazy places. The Center for Disease Control started out as the Malaria War Control Board based in Atlanta. Partly because the head of Coke had some people out to his plantation, and they got infected with malaria, and partly cause all the military recruits were coming down and having a higher fatality rate from malaria while training than in the field. Microsoft Research has a thing called the Sense Cam that, as you walk around, it's taking photos all the time. And the software will filter and find the ones that are interesting without having to think, let's get out the camera and get that shot. You just have that, and software helps you pick what you want. One thing I've always loved about the culture at Microsoft is there is nobody who is tougher on us, in terms of what we need to learn and do better, than the people in the company itself. You can walk down these halls, and they'll tell you, we need to do usability better, push this or that frontier. The way to be successful in the software world is to come up with breakthrough software, and so whether it's Microsoft Office or Windows, it's pushing that forward. New ideas, surprising the marketplace, so good engineering and good business are one in the same. Capitalism has worked very well. Anyone who wants to move to North Korea is welcome. People always fear change. People feared electricity when it was invented, didn't they? People feared coal, they feared gas-powered engines. There will always be ignorance, and ignorance leads to fear. But with time, people will come to accept their silicon masters. Microsoft is not about greed. It's about innovation and fairness. Whether I'm at the office, at home, or on the road, I always have a stack of books I'm looking forward to reading. If all my bridge coach ever told me was that I was satisfactory, I would have no hope of ever getting better. How would I know who was the best? How would I know what I was doing differently? The outside perception and inside perception of Microsoft are so different. The view of Microsoft inside Microsoft is always kind of an underdog thing. In almost every job now, people use software and work with information to enable their organization to operate more effectively. Innovation is moving at a scarily fast pace. Teaching's hard. You need different skills, positive reinforcement, keeping students from getting bored, commanding their attention in a certain way. It's okay for China to invent cancer drugs that cure patients in the United States. We want them to catch up. But as the leader, we want to keep getting a very, very high standard. We don't want them to catch up because we're slowing down or, even worse, going into reverse. Unfortunately, the highly curious student is a small percentage of the kids. Music, even with these dial-up connections you have to the internet, is very practical to download. Digital technology has several features that can make it much easier for teachers to pay special attention to all their students. Like almost everyone who uses email, I receive a ton of spam every day. Much of it offers to help me get out of debt or get rich quick. It would be funny if it weren't so exciting. One of the statistics that always amazes me is the approval of the Chinese government, not elected, is over 80%. The approval of the US government, fully elected, is 19%. Well, we elected these people and they didn't elect those people. Isn't it supposed to be different? Aren't we supposed to like the people that we elected? The spread of online information isn't just good for charities. It's also good for donors. You can go to a site like Charity Navigator, which evaluates non-profits on their financial health as well as the amount of information they share about their work. The only definition by which America's best days are behind it is on a purely relative basis. Understanding science and pushing the boundaries of science is what makes me immensely satisfied. We make the future sustainable when we invest in the poor, not when we insist on their suffering. By 2018, an estimated 63% of all new US jobs will require workers with an education beyond high school. For our young people to get those jobs, They first need to graduate from high school ready to start a post-secondary education. In energy, you have to plan and do research way in advance, sometimes decades in advance, to get a new system that's safer, doesn't require us to go around the world to get all our oil. In the old generation, if one kid bought a PlayStation 2 and the other kid bought an Xbox, at his house you played PlayStation, at your house you played Xbox. Now that it's online, all those early buyers who you want to play with, they've got their reputation online of who they are and how good they are at these games. On my desk I have 3 screens, synchronized to form a single desktop. I can drag items from one screen to the next. Once you have that large display area, you'll never go back, because it has a direct impact on productivity. When I was growing up, my parents were almost involved in various volunteer things. My dad was head of Planned Parenthood. And it was very controversial to be involved with that. Digital reading will completely take over. It's lightweight and it's fantastic for sharing. Over time it will take over. When you want to do your homework, fill out your tax return, or see all the choices for a trip you want to take, you need a full-size screen. Eventually you won't think of the internet business. You'll think of it more like news, weather, sports, but even the taxonomy isn't clear. I can understand wanting to have millions of dollars. There's a certain freedom, meaningful freedom, that comes with that. It's a nice reader. But there's nothing on the iPad I look at and say, oh, I wish Microsoft had done it. Nuclear energy, in terms of an overall safety record, is better than other energy. I remember thinking quite logically that I didn't want to spoil my children with wealth and so that I would create a foundation, but not knowing exactly what it would focus on. I'm sorry that we have to have a Washington presence. We thrived during our first 16 years without any of this. I never made a political visit to Washington and we had no people here. It wasn't on our radar screen. We were just making great software. Well, I think any author or musician is anxious to have legitimate sales of their products, partly so they're rewarded for their success, partly so they can go on and do new things. Apple has always leveraged technologies that the PC industry has driven to critical mass. The bus structures, the graphics cards, the peripherals, the connection networks, things like that, so they're kind of in the PC ecosystem and kind of not. The malaria parasite has been killing children and sapping the strength of whole populations for tens of thousands of years. It is impossible to calculate the harm malaria has done to the world. The potential financial reward for building the next Windows is so great that there will never be a shortage of new technologies seeking to challenge it. I think it makes sense to believe in God, but exactly what decision in your life you make differently because of it, I don't know. Any version of Windows is going to have lots of great new things that people use and things that are tough. Being able to see an activity log of where a kid has been going on the internet is a good thing. Living on $6 a day means you have a refrigerator, a TV, a cell phone, your children can go to school. That's not possible on $1 a day. The belief that the world is getting worse, that we can't solve extreme poverty and disease, isn't just mistaken. It is harmful. The world at large is less inequitable today than at any time in history. Number of people in abject poverty, as a percentage, is at all-time low. We all know that there are these exemplars who can take the toughest students, and they'll teach them 2.5 years of math in a single year. Oh, I think there are a lot of people who would be buying and selling online today that go up there and they get the information, but then when it comes time to type in their credit card they think twice because they're not sure about how that might get out and what that might mean for them. The difference between a stranger sending you a message that you might be interested in at a very low volume level, no repetition, just sending it to very few people, and that being done as spam, those things get close enough that you want to be careful never to filter out something that's legitimate. If you're a person struggling to eat and stay healthy, you might have heard about Michael Jordan or Muhammad Ali, but you'll never have heard of Bill Gates. 3D is a way of organizing things, particularly as we're getting much more media information on the computer, a lot more choices, a lot more navigation than we've ever had before. For a highly motivated learner, it's not like knowledge is secret and somehow the internet made it not secret. It just made knowledge easy to find. If you're a motivated enough learner, books are pretty good. I agree with people like Richard Dawkins that mankind felt the need for creation myths. Before we really began to understand disease and the weather and things like that, we sought false explanations for them. Now science has filled in some of the realm, not all, that religion used to fill. I'm not big on to-do lists. Instead, I use email and desktop folders and my online calendar. So when I walk up to my desk, I can focus on the emails I've flagged and check the folders that are monitoring particular projects and particular blogs. If you're low income in the United States, you have a higher chance of going to jail than you do of getting a 4-year degree. And that doesn't seem entirely fair. My mum was on the United Way group that decides how to allocate the money and looks at all the different charities and makes the very hard decisions about where the pool of funds is going to go. The most interesting biofuel efforts avoid using land that's expensive and has high opportunity costs. They do this by getting onto other types of land, or taking advantage of byproducts that aren't used in the food chain today, or by intercropping. There is no doubt that as an economy grows in a great way like India has, that you have to step back and change your tax systems, because you start to get more disparities of wealth. Until we're educating every kid in a fantastic way, until every inner city is cleaned up, there is no shortage of things to do. I have a particular relationship with Vinod Khosla because he's got a lot of very interesting science-based energy startups. The next time someone tells you we can trim the budget by cutting aid, I hope you will ask whether it will come at the cost of more people dying. Harnessing steam power required many innovations, as William Rosen chronicles in the book The Most Powerful Idea in the World. In almost every area of human endeavor, the practice improves over time. That hasn't been the case for teaching. My son likes to go see mines and electric plants, or the Large Hadron Collider, and we've had a chance to see a lot of interesting stuff. Certainly I'll never be able to put myself in the situation that people growing up in the less developed countries are in. I've gotten a bit of a sense of it by being out there and meeting people and talking with them. China has many successful entrepreneurs and business people. I hope that more people of insight will put their talents to work to improve the lives of poor people in China and around the world, and seek solutions for them. Haiti should remind us all that there is an immediate need to invest in and promote long-term development projects that are sustainable, scalable, and proven to work. In K-12, almost everybody goes to local schools. Universities are a bit different because kids actually do pick the university. The bizarre thing, though, is that the merit of university is actually how good the students going in are, the SAT scores of the kids going in. In poor countries, we still need better ways to measure the effectiveness of the many government workers providing health services. They are the crucial link bringing tools such as vaccines and education to the people who need them most. How well trained are they? Are they showing up to work? Some people, through luck and skill, end up with a lot of assets. If you're good at kicking a ball, writing software, investing in stocks, it pays extremely well. The Gates Foundation has learned that 2 questions can predict how much kids learn: does your teacher use class time well? And, when you're confused, does your teacher help you get straightened out? The main thing that's missing in energy is an incentive to create things that are zero CO2 emitting and that have the right scale and reliability characteristics. The nuclear approach I'm involved in is called a traveling wave reactor, which uses waste uranium for fuel. There's a lot of things that have to go right for that dream to come true. Many decades of building demo plants, proving the economics are right. But if it does, you could have cheaper energy with no CO2 emissions. When you revolutionize education, you're taking the very mechanism of how people be smarter and do new things, and you're priming the pump for so many incredible things. I read a lot of obscure books, and it is nice to open a book. Legacy is a stupid thing. I don't want a legacy. The trouble with energy farming is that the energy isn't always where you want to use it, and it isn't always when you want to use it. According to Ethiopian custom, parents wait to name a baby because children often die in the first weeks of life. Corruption is one of the most common reasons I hear in views that criticize aid. Helping convene global stakeholders to establish a set of measurable, actionable and consensus-built goals focused on extreme poverty is invaluable. I think the positive competition between states in India is one of the most positive dynamics that the country has. India is more of an aid recipient than a provider of aid. The billionaire song is what my kids tease me with. They sing it to me. It's funny. The thing about HD DVD that is attractive to Microsoft is that it's very pro-consumer in letting you copy all movies up onto the hard disk. You can't have a rigid view that all new taxes are evil. Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons. For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average of about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And, somehow, we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. You know, capitalism is this wonderful thing that motivates people, it causes wonderful inventions to be done. But in this area of diseases of the world at large, it's really let us down. I have seen firsthand that agricultural science has enormous potential to increase the yields of small farmers and lift them out of hunger and poverty. The US couldn't even get rid of Saddam Hussein. And we all know that the EU is just a passing fad. They'll be killing each other again in less than a year. I'm sick to death of all these fascist lawsuits. A lot of people assume that creating software is purely a solitary activity where you sit in an office with the door closed all day and write lots of code. In order for the United States to do the right things for the long term, it appears to be helpful for us to have the prospect of humiliation. Sputnik helped us fund good science, really good science. The semiconductor came out of it. Okay, I have a nickname. My family calls me Threy because I'm William III. My dad has the same name, which is always confusing because my dad is well known, and I'm also known. Over time, yes, countries will need to look at specific GMO products like they look at drugs today, where they don't approve them all. They look hard at the safety and the testing. And they make sure that the benefits far outweigh any of the downsides. People want to watch whatever video they want to watch whenever they want to watch. If you provision your internet infrastructure adequately, you can do that. There's always been a lot of information about your activities. Every phone number you dial, every credit card charge you make. It's long since past that a typical person doesn't leave footprints. Well, I don't think there's any need for people to focus on my career. I don't think there's anything unique about human intelligence. Antitrust is the way that the government promotes markets when there are market failures. It has nothing to do with the idea of free information. Driving up the value of the advertising is a big commitment for Microsoft. I think when smallpox was eliminated, the whole world got pretty excited about that because it's just such a dramatic success. I'm an investor in a number of biotech companies, partly because of my incredible enthusiasm for the great innovations they will bring. In 80% of the world, energy will be bought where it is economic. You have to help the rest of the world get energy at a reasonable price. It's easier to add things onto a PC than it's ever been before. It's one click, and boom, it comes down. Money has no utility to me beyond a certain point. Nigeria has moved into low-middle income, but their north is very poor, and the healthcare systems there have broken down. There are more people dying of malaria than any specific cancer. Although I don't have a prescription for what others should do, I know I have been very fortunate and feel a responsibility to give back to society in a very significant way. If you're using first-class land for biofuels, then you're competing with the growing of food. And so you're actually spiking food prices by moving energy production into agriculture. Internet TV and the move to the digital approach is quite revolutionary. TV historically has been a broadcast medium with everybody picking from a very finite number of channels. In a budget, how important is art versus music versus athletics versus computer programming? At the end of the day, some of those trade-offs will be made politically. The worst pandemic in modern history was the Spanish flu of 1918, which killed tens of millions of people. Today, with how interconnected the world is, it would spread faster. I have an excellent memory, a most excellent memory. I'm a geek. There are people who don't like capitalism, and people who don't like PCs. But there's no one who likes the PC who doesn't like Microsoft. Me and my dad are the biggest promoters of an estate tax in the US. It's not a popular position. Today, we're very dependent on cheap energy. We just take it for granted, all the things you have in the house, the way industry works. The world has been very careful to pick very few diseases for eradication, because it is very tough. A lot of the things that will really improve the world fortunately aren't dependent on Washington doing something different. Given how few young people actually read the newspaper, it's a good thing they'll be reading a newspaper on a screen. I don't think there is any philosophy that suggests having polio is a good thing. I went to a public school through 6th grade, and being good at tests wasn't cool. I'm certainly well taken care of in terms of food and clothes. If people want capital gains taxed more like the highest rate on income, that's a good discussion. Maybe that's the way to help close the deficit. Measles will always show you if someone isn't doing a good job on vaccinations. Kids will start dying of measles. Of my mental cycles, I devote maybe 10% to business thinking. Business isn't that complicated. I wouldn't want to put it on my business card. The typical project design time for a large company like IBM, and they keep track of this, is a little over 4 years. We have to find a way to make the aspects of capitalism that serve wealthier people serve poorer people as well. I have a company that is not Microsoft, called Corebase. Corebase is the operation that merged with Bitman Archives. It has nothing to do with Microsoft. It was intentionally done outside of Microsoft because Microsoft isn't interested. In the long run, your human capital is your main base of competition. Your leading indicator of where you're going to be 20 years from now is how well you're doing in your education system. Outlook 2003 did create the idea of search folders and the whole Longhorn philosophy. You can see it at work in search folders, where instead of having to drop things into individual folders, and things exist only in one folder, you create these search folders and you have the criteria for the search folder. People are always coming up to me and saying, "I heard your dad's speech, and it's really great." And they'll mention some place I didn't even know my dad was going to. Software substitution. Whether it's for drivers or waiters or nurses, it's progressing. Technology over time will reduce demand for jobs, particularly at the lower end of skill set. The Global Fund is a central player in the progress being achieved on HIV, TB and malaria. It channels resources to help countries fight these diseases. I believe in its impact because I have seen it firsthand. The ideal thing would be to have a 100% effective AIDS vaccine. And to have broad usage of that vaccine. That would literally break the epidemic. The tool that's most associated with the recent progress against malaria is the long-lasting bed net. Bed nets are a fantastic innovation. But we can do even better. We can invent new ways to control the mosquitoes that carry the malaria parasite. To create a new standard, it takes something that's not just a little bit different. It takes something that's really new and really captures people's imagination, and the Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard. With tech companies, whoever's the leader is always questioned, you know. They say, "Is this the end of them?" And, "There's more." More times people think that's the case than it really is the case. With Windows 8, Microsoft is trying to gain market share in what has been dominated by the iPad-type device. But a lot of those users are frustrated. They can't type. They can't create documents. Software is a great combination between artistry and engineering. We are in the throes of a transition where every publication has to think of their digital strategy. If you have 50 different plug types, appliances wouldn't be available and would be very expensive. But once an electric outlet becomes standardized, many companies can design appliances, and competition ensues, creating variety and better prices for consumers. The future of advertising is the internet. I don't think there's a boundary between digital media and print media. Every magazine is doing an online version. Almost every way we make electricity today, except for the emerging renewables, and nuclear puts out CO2. And so, what we're going to have to do at a global scale is create a new system. And so, we need energy miracles. Maintaining a consistent platform also helps improve product support, a significant problem in the software industry. Energy innovation is not a nationalistic game. I meet people overseas that know 5 languages, that the only language I'm comfortable in is English. Investing for the poor requires participation from the entire community. This whole phenomenon of the computer in a library is an amazing thing. Fortunately for India, it has got a growing economy. If it is doing the right things with taxation and focusing on the right areas for human development, it is going to have no problem, over a period of time, taking care of its own needs. I spend a lot of time reading. Really advanced civilization is based on advances in energy. Considering their impact, you might expect mosquitoes to get more attention than they do. Sharks kill fewer than a dozen people every year, and in the US they get a week dedicated to them on TV every year. Steve Jobs' ability to focus in on a few things that count, get people who get user interface right, and market things as revolutionary are amazing things. I never took a day off in my 20s. Not one. And I'm still fanatical, but now I'm a little less fanatical. In inner city, low-income communities of color, there's such a high correlation in terms of educational quality and success. Americans want students to get the best education possible. We want schools to prepare children to become good citizens and members of a prosperous American economy. Bitcoin is mostly about anonymous transactions, and I don't think over time that's a good way to go. I'm a huge believer in digital currency, but doing it on an anonymous basis I think that leads to some abuses, so I'm not involved in Bitcoin. Even with cameras being very cheap, one thing that researchers noticed was that you look really bad in a video conference image because the lighting is bad and you get shadows and things. I understand how every healthy child, every new road, puts a country on a better path, but instability and war will arise from time to time, and I'm not an expert on how you get out of those things. The fight against AIDS in China is already well underway. The Chinese government and other funders are providing major support, and they'll continue to bear primary responsibility for delivering prevention and treatment. There's 20 companies that I have investments in, some batteries, some solar thermal, one big nuclear thing. We need hundreds and hundreds of companies like that, so that in a 20-year time frame we really are starting to change the energy infrastructure. There's no such thing as going to a soapbox and saying, "The government's corrupt," and not having the intelligence service see your face. In the digital world, that can be done. We should all grow our own food and do our own waste processing, we really should. I know there's a farmer out there somewhere who never wants a PC, and that's fine with me. The kids are a big part of my schedule. When the PC was launched, people knew it was important. By 2035, there will be almost no poor countries left in the world. Almost all countries will be what we now call lower middle income or richer. Connectivity enables transparency for better government, education, and health. Exposure from a young age to the realities of the world is a super big thing. Flying cars are not a very efficient way to move things from one point to another. I don't generally read a lot of fiction. I don't like typing messages on my phone. Some people get used to it. I'm never fully satisfied with any Microsoft product. I've always been interested in science. One of my favorite books is James Watson's Molecular Biology of the Gene. Innovation is a good thing. The human condition, put aside bioterrorism and a few footnotes, is improving because of innovation. Our teachers deserve better feedback. People are going to buy cheap fertilizer so they can grow enough crops to feed themselves, which will be increasingly difficult with climate change. The intersection of law, politics, and technology is going to force a lot of good thinking. The mainstream is always under attack. A first-generation fortune is the most likely to be given away, but once a fortune is inherited, it's less likely that a very high percentage will go back to society. Countries which receive aid do graduate. Within a generation, Korea went from being a big recipient to being a big aid donor. China used to get quite a bit of aid, now it's aid neutral. Eradications are special. 0 is a magic number. You either do what it takes to get to 0 and you're glad you did it, or you get close, give up and it goes back to where it was before, in which case you wasted all that credibility, activity, money that could have been applied to other things. The Green Revolution focused on the big three: maize, rice and wheat, and the Green Revolution did not adapt the big three to African conditions, other than South Africa, as much as they should have. The year one was born, 1955, the first big disease eradication program in the world was declared for malaria. After about a decade of work, they realized that, at least in the tropical areas, they did not have the tools to get it done. There are websites that any government wants to block. The truth about the internet is that it's extremely hard to block anything, extremely hard. You'll never get perfect blocking. DOS is ugly and interferes with users' experience. Rich countries can afford to overpay for things. If I hadn't given my money away, I'd have had more than anyone else on the planet. It's hard to improve public education, that's clear. Well-spent aid money is saving lives for a few $1,000s per life saved. When Paul Allen and I started Microsoft over 30 years ago, we had big dreams about software. We had dreams about the impact it could have. The AIDS is a disease that is hard to talk about. We are not even close to finishing the basic dream of what the PC can be. I'm going to save my public voice largely for the issues where I have some depth. There's no magic line between an application and an operating system that some bureaucrat in Washington should draw. Who decides what's in Windows? The customers who buy it. Well, private money can take risks in a way that government money often isn't willing to. China is certainly an important player in the global economy, and a widespread AIDS epidemic would threaten that growth. Common Core is a big win for education. Drones overall will be more impactful than I think people recognize, in positive ways to help society. Eventually, all companies are replaced. For Africa to move forward, you've really got to get rid of malaria. I am results-oriented. I think that society has to be careful not to shift all of its resources to the elderly versus the young. I was a kind of hyper-intense person in my 20s and very impatient. India has over 20% of the kids born in the world. And they move around a lot. It's possible, you can never know, that the universe exists only for me. If so, it's sure going well for me, I must admit. K-12 is partly about babysitting the kids so the parents can do other things. Lectures should go from being like the family singing around the piano to high-quality concerts. Most poor people live in the poorest countries. My experience of malaria was just taking anti-malarial, which give you strange dreams, because I don't want to get malaria. My wife thinks she's better than me at puzzles. I haven't given in on that one yet. Newspaper readership is still growing in India. 90% of the cases of polio are in security vulnerable areas. No one person controls Microsoft. The board and the shareholders decide whether they want to have me as CEO. Nobody believes in completely unadulterated capitalism. Nobody spends any money on smallpox unless they worry about a bioterrorist recreating it. People should just buy a CD and rip it. You are legal then? Personally, I'd like to see more of our leaders take a technocratic approach to solving our biggest problems. Philanthropy should be taking much bigger risks than business. If these are easy problems, business and government can come in and solve them. Philanthropy should be voluntary. Security guys break the Mac every single day. Every single day, they come out with a total exploit. Your machine can be taken over totally. Technology is unlocking the innate compassion we have for our fellow human beings. The ability of a successful company to add functionality to its product has long been upheld. The best teacher is very interactive. The future of Windows is to let the computer see, listen and even learn. The microprocessor is a miracle. The quality of research in the US is absolutely the best. The tablet is not mainstream. Reading off the screen is not mainstream. The world is not flat, and PCs are not, in the hierarchy of human needs, in the first 5 rungs. There certainly is a case to be made that taxes should be more progressive. There is no author whose books I look forward to more than Vaclav Smil. 2 out of every 5 people on Earth today owe their lives to the higher crop outputs that fertilizer has made possible. Whenever you have multiple devices including multiple PCs that you want to share information with, it's always been a bit complicated. China and the US need each other very badly. Yes, we should argue about some things, but it's not an us versus them, it's an us and them type scenario. I've been very lucky, and therefore I owe it to try and reduce the inequity in the world. And that's kind of a religious belief. I mean, it's at least a moral belief. People don't want lots and lots of single-purpose devices. They do not want to have to learn how to set up something for photos, another thing for music, another thing for video. The common thread for everything I do is this idea of a web services architecture. What does that mean? It means taking components of software and systems and having them be self-describing, so that you can name them, ask them what their capabilities are, and communicate with them using a standard protocol. The idea that you encourage companies to take their innovative thinkers and think about the most needy, even beyond the market opportunities, that's something that appropriately ought to be done. The part of uranium that's fissile, when you hit it with a neutron, it splits in two, is about 0.7%. The reactors we have today are burning that 0.7%. The truth of Moore's law has made remarkable things possible. On the software side, I think natural user interfaces in all their forms are equally significant. When Ford sells a car, a dealer isn't allowed to take out the engine and put a different one in. When a newsstand sells the Washington Post, no one can go to the newsstand and pay them to rip out the classified section and put their own classified section in. If they could, they would do so. Windows is probably the most important product in the entire PC industry. Everything we do in terms of supporting touch, new hardware, and accessibility has incredible impact. You have to have a certain realism that government is a pretty blunt instrument, and without the constant attention of highly qualified people with the right metrics, it will fall into not doing things very well. Americans move more than 10 times over the course of a lifetime. Windows 8 is key to the future, the Surface computer. Employers have decided that having the breadth of knowledge that's associated with the 4-year degree is often something they want to see in the people they give that job to. AIDS itself is subject to incredible stigma. China adopted a capitalist system in the 1980s, and they went from a 60% poverty rate to 10%. Eventually we'll be able to sequence the human genome and replicate how nature did intelligence in a carbon-based system. I didn't used to wear a watch. Now I have a spot watch, which I wear all the time. I don't have a magic formula for prioritizing the world's problems. I get more spam than anyone I know. I like the idea of puffing your Christmas wish list up and letting people share it. I think any statement about stock prices is always suspect unless it's made by Warren Buffett. I think there will be PCs at every price point. I'm going to retain a lot of Microsoft's stock. I'm not a macroeconomics person. If you count email, I'm on the internet all day, every day. Like any well-designed software product, Windows is designed, developed and tested as an integrated whole. Like my friend Warren Buffett, I feel particularly lucky to do something every day that I love to do. He calls it tap dancing to work. Money has always been in politics. And I'm not sure you'd want money to be completely out of politics. My mum and my dad were both very sociable, meeting lots of interesting people. Netscape was able to get the government working on its behalf. People are using Windows PCs more than they watch TV now. Skype actually does get a fair bit of revenue. Some very poor countries run great vaccination systems, and some richer ones run terrible programs. Spam is taking email, which is a wonderful tool, and exploiting the idea that it's very inexpensive to send mail. The bulk of the universities are about teaching kids. The internet is the easiest thing to get into. To be an internet retailer, you just get that URL. The misconception that aid falls straight into the hands of dictators largely stems from the Cold War era. The moral systems of religion, I think, are super important. The most impactful dollars that Australia can spend are actually what goes to help the poorest. The protester, I think, will speak up for the world's poorest. There is a difference between what technology enables and what historical business practices enable. Typically, your corporate email account is not, today, that spam targeted. It's more the free email accounts that are spam targeted. When I was in my 40s, Microsoft was my primary activity. You're never going to get the amount of CO2 emitted to go down unless you deal with the one magic metric, which is CO2 per kilowatt hour. In order to deal with all the medical cost demands and other challenges in the US, as we look to raise that revenue, the rich will have to pay slightly more. That's quite clear. Now everyone takes it for granted that you can look up movie reviews, track locations, and order stuff online. I wish there was a way we could take it away from people for a day so they could remember what it was like without it. The nuclear industry has this amazing record, even equipment from generations 1 and 2. But nuclear mishaps tend to come in these big events, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, and now Fukushima, so it's more visible. UK companies are in very international and very competitive markets. If you look at PC penetration in the UK, it is very similar to the United States market. You can always think of something like the Xbox 360 as a super set-top box that can do everything the set-top box does, but then have the graphics to do the games as well.